Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to the February 1st council meeting 2022. Remind everybody that tomorrow is Groundhog Day. And this meeting is being live streamed and also will be put on YouTube. So I would like to also acknowledge that we're on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people under the Robbins-Huron Treaty and the waterways traveled by the Métis of our region. Prior to the open session of council, there was a closed meeting and it was moved by Councillor Borneman, seconded by Councillor Keith, that pursuant to section 239(2) and 3 of the Municipal Act SO 2001 C25 as amended, Council of the Corporation of the Town of Parry Sound moved to meeting closed to the public in order to address matters pertaining to C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land for municipal or local board purposes, proposed property exchange, residential water lot leases, and K, a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board, proposed property exchange residential water lot leases. That was carried and the meeting was held. Are there any additions to the agenda? Chief Thompson, do you have something that, or Ms. Johnson, do you have that information?
Yes, prior to council, just prior to council meeting, I forwarded information on a request to have an item added to the agenda having to do with a rezoning application, McDougall Township and Town of Parry Sound, consideration of direction for Town of Parry Sound staff in response to that.
Okay. Okay, so we'll add that to the agenda. And Ms. Johnson, will we do that after correspondence?
I believe there may be another item as well that you'll be dealing with after correspondence that's related, so you could add that just after it as well.
Okay, all right, good. Okay, there's also another item which we'll read. There isn't much correspondence, but a resolution that we can deal with at that particular time too, with regard to our the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics. So we can do that then. So may I have a mover and seconder for the agenda then as amended? Councillor McCann and Councillor Borneman, that the council agenda for February 1st, 2022 be approved as amended. Anyone opposed to that? No, that's carried. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? Nope. Okay, very good. Mover and second for the minutes. Councillor Horn and Councillor Burden, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held January 18th, 2022 be approved as circulated. Any questions, comments on the minutes? Nope. Okay. Anyone opposed to passing the minutes? Nope. That's carried then. Questions of staff? Councillor McCann.
Thank you. This is for Mr. Kearns. And this is not so much a question, but a compliment. I'd like to, at this opportunity, thank Mike and his staff for their help. Community Support Services will be embarking on fundraising at the transfer station, and his staff have been extremely helpful to us over the years. And Mike, I just want to thank you for all their help and assistance, always friendly, and we appreciate that. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thanks. Councillor Keith.
Yes, thank you. I have two questions for Mr. Cairns. One is, what is the plan for snowbank removal now? Because we know the snow keeps a coming and there's talking more. And the second question is, can you advise what is the mixture that is now being put on the sidewalks? Because you can see it's a combination. I've had some concerns about whatever the dark material is mixed with as to aggravating floors, etc.
Certainly, through your worship. So staff have begun doing snow removal on a rotating basis as the weather conditions allow. So that is an ongoing process through town. I believe downtown was completed some time back, probably perhaps prior to our last snowfall. But a lot of the cul-de-sacs in those areas of town are continuously being removed as the weather conditions allow. And the material being applied to the sidewalk is a mixture of salt and sand. So the dark material is actually an aggregate, an abrasive. So it's essentially, it's just sand. Provides traction when it's extremely cold, and this winter has been consistent, if nothing else, with the cold weather up until just the last day or two. So salt doesn't typically work very well below -12. So when we have those extremely cold temperatures, it's very difficult to remove everything from the sidewalk, so the abrasives are applied to give traction when you're walking.
Okay. Any other? Councillor Backman, question?
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is for Mr. Cairns. Good evening. I see that the speed awareness signs have been relocated to Bow Street. And I just wanted to know if there is a timeline on reviewing that data and information coming to council at any time with regards to that?
Through your worship. So the good news is that those signs actually report in real time. So the data is accessible essentially as it's collected. It's not quite instantaneous, but staff have the ability to monitor it on a real-time basis. So we do have 3 of those active feedback radar signs that will be rotating around on a constant basis in an effort to get folks to slow down. So we can certainly compile that data and bring it back to council. We also have some sensors through our street lighting supplier that have been installed as a trial basis. So they're radar speed sensors, and there's 5 of them around town. They are located on the streetlights and continuously collect data 24 hours a day. So we also have that data to supplement as well. So we can certainly bring something back to council. It's a little difficult to analyze the data correctly this time of year. Obviously, it's not the best time of year to collect speed data. However, it may be very telling nonetheless.
Just as a follow-up, I guess then outside of bringing that information to council, what are the objectives that your department hopes to achieve through obviously traffic calming, but are there other goals that you will implement based on that data?
Through your worship. So yes, we collect traffic count data, which goes into our engineering calculations for road adequacy, and that data feeds into our ability to better manage our assets in the long run. We know the volume of traffic. It helps us classify the roads so that our maintenance standards are correct based on speed, volume. There's a number of factors, as well as certainly the traffic calming. That's the intention of the active visual feedback of the sign, is to get your attention as a motorist and bring to your attention if you're in fact traveling too quickly, and get you to change that habit. The data also, though, will feed into enforcement should it be necessary. So what these types of devices do is collect data, and we have the ability to run reports based on time of day extent of speeding, those sorts of things. There's a number of different reports that we can provide to our policing partners to provide focused enforcement if it's necessary.
Thank you. It sounds like it was a good investment. Thanks for getting that completed. Appreciate it.
Councillor Borneman, do you?
Just as a quick follow-up on Councillor Bachman's question, Mr. Cairns, does moving the signs out of a neighborhood indicate that there's been a level of success, or you found that the need is reduced in that neighborhood? Or are we just kind of hopscotching around trying to accumulate as much data as we can with various areas in the community?
Through your worship, I would suggest it's the latter, more so than the former. We wouldn't, now I wouldn't say that's directly applicable in all situations. What happens sometimes when the data or when the signs get left too long in one area, they become like other signs and they just don't quite have the same visual impact. But the value of the data is also there for us as well in moving them around town and knowing what our volumes and our speeds are in other areas. So we do have the ability to go back and analyze and see if it's had an impact. That would be our hope, certainly. But I can't suggest that that is the case in all the
So
time.
just as a quick follow-up, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Cairns, so when we, for instance, Wabick Street was one of the early contestants in this one of the earliest areas that was monitored, where the findings from those tests relayed to police to say that speeding is highest at 9 a.m. and 6:45, or this is when the trouble arises? Is this how this, are there direct communications with OPP in hopes of addressing those issues?
Through your worship, certainly that would be the intention. The initial findings on Wabick Street, for instance, didn't indicate a systemic speeding problem. So that makes it very difficult from an enforcement standpoint. I think I can point out Joseph Street near the high school, and I would certainly encourage all motorists to please slow down. That is an area that we have significant issues, and we are communicating that data to the OPP directly with specific time periods and the extent of what the issue is. So speeding, I think people need to realize too that enforcement of speeding is different than, it's not 51 kilometers an hour in a 50 zone, for instance. It's very difficult it's not an absolute, I guess, is what I'm saying. And typically when we identify issues, they're of certain magnitude before they become enforcement worthy, I guess, for lack of better words. And I would suggest that Joseph Street is one of those areas that we've identified for sure. It is a school zone, it is a community safety zone, and it is a 40 zone. So I would encourage folks to remember that traveling through there, it could get quite expensive. And perhaps just taking the lesson free would be a better alternative.
Thank you.
I watched that sign one night, and I tell you, I thought it was going to pop off the pole the way it was flashing with the cars that were speeding by there. It was no longer saying slow down or whatever, watch your speed. It was just flashing away. So yeah, people need to slow down. So any other questions of staff? Councillor Bachman?
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is for Ms. Actually, no, I have received this information, so I will not be asking this question. Thanks.
Okay, all right. Okay, and no further questions? No? Okay, correspondence, Ms. Johnson.
Your Worship, we just have one item of correspondence. It's from Christine Anderson. She's indicating that with the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics and the happy news of 3 members of the community, Graham Ritchie, Megan Oldham, and Mark Idison, participating as athletes in the Olympics, that she thought a banner under the Welcome to Parry Sound sign on Bow Street would be appropriate, and is asking for council's approval for that. And also, if council would like to make a donation, that would be gratefully accepted. That's the correspondence.
That's correspondence. Thanks, Ms. Johnson. Okay, so I have a resolution here that the Council of the Town of Parry Sound is hereby approved the request to display under the Welcome to Parry Sound sign on Bow Street a banner supporting local athletes, Mark Idison, Megan Oldham, Graham Ritchie, at the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics, and that council hereby approves a donation of an amount which is blank right at the moment to help pay for the cost of the banner. So I need a mover and seconder. Okay, I got Councillor McCann and Councillor Borneman. So, discussion. How much money would somebody like to put on the table to? Paul, sorry, Councillor Borneman.
Hey, you is good. That I sometimes I don't do that well at home, but I'm going to suggest $1,000 just as an opener, and we'll see where it goes.
Okay. How does everybody feel about $1,000? Okay, I see definitely 4 hands if you count myself. So, Doug, did you have something you wanted to say, or are you good with?
Well, would that come out of the municipal assistance program, or is this something entirely different, or it's something standing on its own?
I'm not sure exactly where it's going to come out of, but we did have a little bit of money left over, which we saved. So hopefully there's something there.
Well, I would support the 1,000. And you know, these 3 people are putting Parry Sound on the map, just the way people like Bobby Orr did. And you know, I don't think people in town realize how much Parry Sound is echoed throughout the world in things that we do, products on the shelf, sports, books, everything. So yes, indeed.
Councillor Keith, before I go to you, can I go to Ms. Phillips and just ask where this is coming from?
Hi, good evening, Mr.
Hi,
Mayor.
Ms.
Can you see me?
Yeah.
So typically council has a budget of, we haven't set the budget for 2022, but we normally have miscellaneous donations around $3,000 for council. So we could specify that parts of those monies are for this banner if council wishes.
Okay. All right. Councillor McCann, Councillor Keith had her hand up, and I go there.
Okay.
What I was going to suggest was that we increase it a little bit. 3 people, $1,000 seemed a little low. I just did the math and said to myself, 1,500, that's 500 a piece. I think that's, I think in this situation, 500 a piece is a fair number, and 1,500 is what I would be recommending.
Okay, we're all good with that?
Yeah. Second the motion.
All right.
Yeah. And Mr. Mayor, if I could just add to that, I think that's a good point to make. I'd like to clarify, I shouldn't have said that people of Parry Sound don't think. I think sometimes we forget how much talent is out there in the world. And so this is an opportunity to support that.
Yep. And Councillor Bachman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, just based on the quote that we received, that would support fully the amount quoted. So I think that's great to bump it up. So thank you, Councillor Keith.
Okay, anything further on this one? No? Okay, anyone opposed to passing this resolution? No one's opposed, that's carried. So I would like to thank Christine Anderson for her efforts in promoting the Olympians and trying to get the word out there and some hype around it. Also, our Stocky Center staff are working on some videos as well that can go over to the athletes to, support their endeavors. And, we're hoping all the best that, this certainly is Parry Sound proud. So there's so many people are very pleased about that. And I know that there has been also some different signage go up on signs around town as well, which is good. So I certainly encourage everybody's efforts to encourage our Olympians. So that's good. I'm just thinking at this time, Ms. Johnson, if we could deal with the rezoning direction or resolution, whatever it is, and then that way it's out of the way. Do you have the wording there in front of you to read?
I can read the wording,
Yep.
and if there's any further question, there's a staff person that could deal with that.
Sure.
So
Okay.
the suggested wording for direction is that council direct staff through the planning consultant, municipal planning consultants, to respond to McDougall that the town has concerns over the lack of consultation with the Ministry of Transportation and the lack of an environmental study related to the rezoning application.
Okay. All right. Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Keith and Councillor McCann. Any discussion? No? Okay. Was it a resolution or direction, Ms. Johnson?
It is a direction.
Okay. Anyone opposed to that direction? No one's opposed. That's carried. Thank you. Okay, next is 911, which is an overview of the budget overview presentation. So, Ms. Phillips, you have the floor.
Thank you. Okay, so just
Excuse
one
me.
moment and I'll start with the presentation.
Hang on one second. Councilor
Point of
McCann.
order, Mr. Mayor, we skipped over number 6, the council reports.
Oh, right. I guess I don't want to
Sorry.
forget those, do I?
Okay.
We'll come back to you, Ms. Phillips. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay. I'll go by on the screen. Councillor Borneman, you're up first.
Thank you, although I suspect and I hope that Ms. Phillips will be far more informative and entertaining than we.
Sure she will.
So in the past couple of weeks, I have had a further meeting at the airport and an ad hoc meeting. Well, first at the airport, work is continuing on the runway reconstruction. Otherwise, it's a slow time of year. We're working through budgets, etc. And I did attend one further meeting with an ad hoc committee meeting at Belvedere. And I'm not sure whether this is good news or not, but we've recently had another change at the ministerial level. So I suspect between that and a pending provincial election, it probably slows anything that might be happening up there down to some extent. Although I'm sure that nobody at Queen's Park would admit to that just yet. My only other comment tonight is to congratulate Graham Ritchie, Megan Oldham, and Mark Idison, and I hope that everyone gets behind them in Parry Sound, and cheers loud and long through the Winter Olympics. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Horn.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Since our last council meeting, I have had no other meetings. So echoing what Councillor Borneman said, best of luck to Megan and Graham and Mark. It must be just completely incredible and awesome to wear the maple leaf representing Canada and of course, Parry Sound proud. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McCann.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and fellow councillors and public and staff. Just one meeting to report on since our last meeting here at council, and that was the monthly meeting of the West Parry Sound District Museum Board. That was held Thursday evening, January 27th. For the better part of the meeting, which was actually kind of a short one this time around, we, of course, received our reports from the manager and from the treasurer. We talked a bit about our strategy as we move forward. Now, there were 4 points in our strat plan that were, and I should also say that we approved our draft budget for 2022. We are nearing the 30th anniversary of the construction of the building, and that means some huge capital outlay to maintain and upgrade the facility. I recall, I'm sure as we all do, that when that building first opened up on Tower Hill, and I just can't believe it's 30 years later. It's just amazing where the time has gone by. It's a very unique building, and a lot of special provisions are needed to protect and maintain the environment, which protects the artifacts inside. So we're going to be looking at some huge capital outlay in the next few years to maintain that and keep it straight. We also, in that strat plan, talked about enhancing the access, which means exploring the traditional use of the exhibits to showcase selected aspects of the district's history by providing access for others to discover through not only appropriate physical means, but also, just as importantly, online. And that was a big thing in our strat plan, was moving a lot of our efforts online, not to take anything away from the physical building and what's inside, but there is so much work to do that we can do in capturing and sharing artifacts, and especially video and audio productions that we can share with the world. So we're very conscious of that as we move forward. Certainly, and again, as far as capital outlay goes to maintain the building, funding continues to be a source of stress and certainly distraction for the board and for staff. So securing human and financial resources beyond requiring simply just to be open and to show off our artifacts is going to be top priority. So there you have it. I guess that's just basically about it, except that the museum is a very, very important a part of our of the West District, and as we live history every day, and we need to capture that history every day and write it down and mark it down and record it so that it's not forgotten and well preserved. So we'll be moving forward on that. And my congratulations also to our Olympians out there, and we certainly cheer you on and wish you all the best. You know, we're seeing these folks at the height of their career, but they spent years practicing and working towards such moments. And so we sure hope it pays. It's already paid off just for the fact that they are where they are right now. But we hope that they'll go for the whole enchilada, so to speak. And whatever you do, you'll be making us very proud back home. So congratulations and good luck. And that's my report.
Good, thank you. Councillor Burton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Likewise, my best to the 3 Olympians representing Parry Sound in Beijing. Just as Councillor McCann said, they've already proven what kind of people they are. We're going to be behind you all the way, guys, and certainly going to make the Olympics a lot more exciting having you there representing us. A couple of meetings since the last council meeting. The January 19th, we had a budget meeting for the Downtown Business Association, and finalized our budget deliberations, and that budget will be coming to council for approval. On January the 26th, we had the first meeting of the Bobby Orr Hall of Fame Ad Hoc Advisory Committee. The request for RFPs was approved and has been sent out. We're hoping to get responses to the RFP applications back within 2 to 3 weeks. So we've got a meeting planned in, I think it's the 21st of February, to see what we've got from them. And we will report back to council as to what we find. And that is my report.
Thank you. Councillor Backman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, everyone. It's been a quiet week for me with regards to meetings. So I do want to congratulate our local athletes on moving forward to the Olympics. And many residents have asked me recently about how the town was supporting the athletes, and I've been redirecting everyone to the Stocky Center posts and the town posts with respect to saying their congratulatories to them. I am looking forward to participating in that tomorrow. So I'd like to thank staff for the opportunity. And I'd also like to just say to our Olympic athletes that I'm looking forward to a hometown welcome upon their successful return. Congratulations again. Thank you, Your Worship.
Welcome. Thank you. Councillor Keith.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, fellow councillors, staff, and the public. Of course, best wishes to the Olympic representatives. I attended the Community Policing Advisory meeting, and we compared the statistics for 2021, the fourth quarter for 2021 to 2020. Violent crime and property crime are down. Drugs are up a marginal amount. If you compare the stats for Parry Sound in reference to West Parry Sound District, you'll find they're really all in sync. So there's no dramatic difference. Ticketing is up due to increase in speeding, and also there's been an increase in impaired driving. The police officers are using an electronic form of ticketing, and it seems to make things much more efficient. I do think that COVID-19 is playing a role in the matter too, because certainly we've heard, I'm sure if nowhere else, on the news and reports in reference to the amount of increase of alcohol use and drug use with people's frustrations and other health issues. The community service officer has been active in the last quarter with a number of activities, including the situational table, the Indigenous training that was for a day, participating in the warming center at Mary Street Center, and also being available at the vaccination clinics and virtual school presentations. So there's been some involvement there. The calls of service have been down, and that's a positive thing for us because we all know this service costs money. So if there's less calls of service and we're getting good service, well, we're ahead of the game at least a little bit. I'm also wanted to make aware that in the discussions at the meeting recently, we discussed regarding the speeding in the community and how the town can work to gather the statistics. So the questions that were asked tonight by a couple of councillors certainly fall in line in reference to what Mr. Cairns was also explaining, that between the speeding signs and the gathering of data, so that can be presented to the police, and then one can look at a more efficient way of monitoring and discouraging the speeding that has been going on. So it's not enough to have anecdotal information. You need the stats to be able to do your police focusing in a really an efficient way, and at the same time bring enforcement in, because we certainly know, as certainly the comments again tonight, we know that there is speeding in the Joseph Street area where it's to be 40 kilometers, but it's knowing the best time for the police cars to be out there and for enforcement to be occurring and education to be occurring. So because we certainly need it at specified times. A cruiser sitting out there all day and the taxpayers paying for that, that's not efficient. The right time is much more efficient. So I'm glad that we're getting the stats, and then we get a plan and get to it and try to alleviate the issue. And yes, the signs being put throughout the community is to have a good idea where and the times that the speeding is occurring. And I think that is really utmost for us to be able to take control of the situation. And I think it needs to be done on a regular basis, not just for a set period of time and then it's neglected again. So I think this is just a part of what we need to do in the future to keep things under control. On the other side of the coin, I would like to give my sympathy and condolences to Mayor, or the former Mayor Khan of Seguin Townships and his family for his passing. And certainly he contributed quite a bit to the Seguin community, and the loss is recognized as also with the lowering of the town flag. In addition, I would also give my condolences to the Betty McDowell family. Betty McDowell was certainly quite instrumental in reference to the signs that we have right downtown. So now that you can, those signals, you have a better idea to hear for people who have visual impairments, to be able to hear when you can walk, not only being able to see, because those who have visual problems need that assistance. So she certainly was instrumental. I remember her speaking to me and asking for the CNIB to get involved and the mayor and see what could we do in our community to be a caring community. And I always thought she was very spunky, because in the last few years, definitely a better skater than I, and she had a visual impairment. It would still go to the Bobby Orr Community Center and rent ice time so that she could go out and skate. And certainly both her and her husband, he played the bagpipes, but they were community minded. So that's another family. It's a loss, because they certainly did help to contribute to our community. And that's my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So council, staff, and public, January 19th, I attended the Provincial Housing Summit hosted by the Premier and Minister Clark. And January 22nd, I was in Mississauga to record a couple of speeches as part of my AMO duties, one for the Roma Conference and one for the Ontario Road Builders Association. January 23rd, I attended the Rural Housing Roundtable as part of the Roma Conference. And again, the Premier and Minister Clark were hosts. There was a good discussion, I think, in both meetings. The first one was more geared to the big city mayors and larger communities. But it became very clear that municipalities are certainly trying to do what they can to create housing. There are literally thousands of units sitting ready to be built. They just have to have building permits taken out right across this province. And it's a case of putting the shovels in the ground, which hopefully we see this spring. So we've got our fingers crossed. January 24th, I attended some of the Roma Conference and a joint delegation with the Ministry of Education. There was Mayor McDermott, Mayor Comrie and our MPP Norm Miller and the Mayor of Bracebridge, Graydon Smith, were also part of the delegation. And the ask was simple. Cancel the demolition at the high school and initiate a new ARC process. The school board's working with old data based on declining population, and our population's growing. So we need assurances also that there's going to be appropriate studies for our students so that they can have a growing education and continue on with a much better standing. But, you know, the bottom line is we don't need a school that's undersized to start off with. We need something that we can build a future for our students and allow for expansion. So currently, that's not what I see. And, you know, we've asked for another meeting with the Board of Education, and that was turned down. So what else do? You try to go to the Ministry of Education and make your point. Hopefully, hopefully they listen. January 25th was the Chamber of Commerce AGM, and due to some technical issues, I wasn't able to zoom in at the appropriate time. So I have to thank Councillor Backman for doing their swearing in ceremony. So, but congratulations to the new board, and we certainly wish them all the best in 2022. January 26th from 4 to 5 p.m. I made a presentation to the Standing Committee on Pre-Budget Consultation on behalf of AMO, certainly representing municipalities and trying to secure more funding for municipalities out of the next provincial budget. January 26th at 5 p.m. I then jumped to a public health Zoom meeting, and the budget was the main focus of discussion at that particular board meeting. January 27th and 28th, I had AMO executive meetings, committee of the whole meeting, and a board meeting. And I would also like to extend my condolences to the family of David Kahn. David was mayor of Seguin for 12 years and definitely brought a lot of new development and new interest to Seguin, and made a number of changes that I think were for the better of the community. So he has to be congratulated for everything that he worked on and tried to do. So certainly to the family, our deepest condolences. When I found out, I asked our clerk to have the flags lowered to half-mast, so that in recognition of service. Councillor McCann also mentioned, or Councillor Keith also mentioned Betty McDowell. I've known the McDowell family for about 60 years. They were backyard neighbors, and so I knew her since I was just a little kid. And, you know, she was always there in the neighborhood, you know, making with an eye on everybody to make sure everybody was behaving as well. But yes, Councillor Keith's right. Her advocacy for the audible signals downtown and putting them in other places as well, I believe has been a benefit, and certainly to our community and to the residents that need those particular signals. So I certainly appreciate her advocacy on that. And no, she was an amazing lady, and she's going to be missed. So my condolences to the family there. Last but not least, best of luck to Megan, Graham, and Mark in the Olympics. We're really hoping that you can bring home a medal, and so we're wishing you all the best. And just we're really proud of you. Okay, so on with the agenda, and we'll go back to Ms. Phillips now. Item 911 for the pre-budget overview presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and the public. So tonight I'll deliver a 2020 budget overview presentation. So just one moment while I get that up on the screen. Okay. Can you see my PowerPoint presentation right now?
Yep. Yep, we
Okay.
can.
Okay. Just one moment. I think I'm going to have to try and share that a different way because it's making all my other screens disappear. Just 1 second.
Oh, that's not good.
No. All right, we'll try this instead. Now I'm not really sure what's happened. Sorry about that. I'm having a bit of difficulty here. Okay. Forrest, I don't know where to see the presentation view. It's giving me a bit of a trouble here. So
You share your screen. I will request remote control and try to get that set up for you.
So you want me to just share the screen that the presentation's on instead
Yes.
of a PowerPoint file? Okay. Oh, that was the issue there. I didn't remember that happening before.
You'll probably want to try either unticking that presenter view or changing the monitor from automatic to whichever monitor you want the presentation to be showing on.
I tried that, but also Zoom totally disappeared and that took over all 3 of my screens, which was kind of odd. Okay, let's try it. Okay, so can everyone see my presentation now?
Yeah, you still have the blocks at the side, but it is there.
Well, that's not what I wanted to do. Hold on.
Ms. Phillips, would you like me to share the screen from the agenda and then you just tell me when to go to the next slide?
Sure, because it's kind of giving me an issue here, which I don't remember this happening before. Okay. All right. All right, so let's get started. So tonight I'll deliver a 2022 budget overview presentation with some preliminary information for council and the public. And on the agenda for tonight, we'll go through what's behind the 22 budget, the fiscal policy framework that guides the budget preparation. I'll mention some of the town's continuous improvement initiatives. Then I'll describe how we benchmark the town against other municipalities, outline some of the fiscal challenges that we're encountering during the pandemic. I'll give you a summary of external transfers and how those are impacting the town's budget, outline some of the operating budget impacts expected, and how we're managing increasing costs, as well as some budget strategies that are being considered. I'll provide you with the draft capital budget figures, and then we'll end the presentation with an outline of the upcoming budget review meetings. All right, next slide. All right, so behind the 2022 budget, each year we provide budget training guidance to our managers. We share guidelines and expected impacts to assist them as they prepare their budgets. Then within the review stage, submissions are reviewed, challenged, and inputs are analyzed, and those budgets are refined and the result recommended to council as a draft budget. Next, public budget deliberations will take place on February 8th for capital and February 22nd for operating. So a bylaw then follows at the next council meeting to establish the budget estimates. So that is the process of the 2022 budget. So let's go on to the next slide. So the fiscal policy. So there are two council policies that guide the development of the budget and financial controls policy and a dedicated capital levy increase. The 2022 range under the policy for an operating increase is between 3.5% and 7%. And staff will work to recommend a budget below the 3.5%. So that guideline is determined by at the low end, the CPI at July 2021. And at the high end, it would be twice the CPI. So each year, a 1.8% increase is dedicated solely to aging infrastructure. All right, next slide. So some of the town's continuous improvement initiatives. So the town continues to implement recommendations from the Information Technology Modernization Review. And in 2022, we'll be working to complete the asset management plan for core infrastructure to meet the regulation deadline. A number of different building, parking, fire, and planning permits applications have been moved online. So that is an initiative that has taken place to become more virtual and serving in those areas. Okay, we can move to the next one. Okay, thank you. So some of the other continuous improvement initiatives that have been taking place. So POA, virtual trial, and audio teleconferencing has been implemented and is ongoing. There is a climate change initiative, which is targeting reduced greenhouse gas emissions taking place. Installation of AVL technology these are just some of the initiatives that are happening at the town. The next slide. A few more initiatives are the GIS Maturity Study, and that is to seek opportunities for enhancement. A digital work order system implementation is planned for 2022. And technology to facilitate live streaming of events has been implemented at the Stocky Center, as well as a reinvention of the fitness trail with 187,500 in grant funding to cover that will be happening in 2022. All right, move on. So each year the town benchmarks against other municipalities using the BMA Study, which pulls FIR, financial information return data from different municipalities where we can compare the town's performance against those municipalities. So we provide some of that data within the budget as well. Okay, next slide. So some of the pandemic fiscal challenges. After the onset of the pandemic, ongoing closures to recreation and cultural facilities due to the public health guidelines and the emergency orders. So throughout the pandemic, there's been impacts to programming revenues, facility rentals, and user fees. And staff are aiming for a return to normal revenue levels for 2022 at the Stocky Center, Bobby Orr Hall of Fame, but those are some of the areas that were initially impacted by the pandemic and any of the lockdowns that have occurred. So in 2022, the budget will be impacted by inflationary pressures that will impact raw material costs, utilities, and services in 2022. Investment earnings have been impacted by very low interest rates throughout the pandemic. There's some additional costs in 2022 expected for the cost of screeners required to operate the Bobby Orr Community Center safely. So those are some of the areas that have been impacted by COVID and those public health guidelines. Okay, next slide. External transfers make up around 35% of the total tax supported expenses of the town. So it's a large portion of the town's expenses are made up of these levies. So this year, the largest increase is the request from the library for their levy, which is around $57,857. There's also an increase expected at the OPP of $7,000 approximately. And the cost of land ambulance is expected to go up by around $16,000. Belvedere long-term care levy is expected to decrease by $18,884 for the town. The overall impact of levy changes is approximately $57,000. Okay, next slide. Okay, operating budget impacts. So salaries and wages, benefits, 1.5% for the union per the collective agreement, and 1.1% for non-union is what is in the operating budget. Okay, Stocky Center part-time staffing hours have been reduced to reflect expected facility usage. So that's one of the areas where the unit's trying to control their costs and align the staffing resources with what's expected throughout the year. BOCC COVID screeners, so there's 31,000 increase in the 2022 budget related to those. All right, next slide. Other impacts include 85,000 related to insurance increases as the hard market continues and municipalities are being impacted by premium increases at the moment. Principal and interest payments for Wabick Isabella, that's 188,000. And as a result of the pandemic, assessment growth is limited at 0.7%, which amounts to $74,000, and $117,000 has a 1.1% impact on the tax rate. So more review and deliberation continues with the operating budget as staff endeavor to propose a budget at the low end of the guidelines. Mr. McCann, I see you have a question there.
Yeah, if I may, thank you. Can you explain what the assessment growth is all about? It seems that property values have gone up. Am I in the same page here? I don't understand how the growth is limited when the value of property, retail sales have gone through the ceiling. Are we talking apples and oranges here, Stephanie?
So through you, Mr. Mayor. So each 4-year cycle, there's a reassessment of property values to realign those with the market value. But due to the pandemic, the reassessment has been postponed. However, when they do that, it really only changes not the levy increase for the average, but each individual property owner, their portion of it, of taxes might change related to that. But this assessment growth of 74,000 relates more to growth that's happened from new buildings or that sort of thing. So not really from a change in the market value of property assessment, but more in like building permits and such, how it changes our assessment for the year that we're talking about right now.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
Yes, you're welcome. So, okay, let's move on to the next slide. Managing increasing costs. So I mentioned that Stocky Center and Bobby Orr Hall of Fame, they've been reviewing costs and labor resources to keep the town contribution unchanged for 2022. And they're changing programming where opportunities exist. And some of those would be with the technology that they've implemented for virtual opportunities and how they may change programming from within the facilities, within that facility. So for 2022, we'll have to apply remaining COVID-19 funding to help manage some of the increasing costs. And right now, what's estimated to be able to be applied is around 161,000 for 2022. So we'll be working to identify what costs are associated with the pandemic and try to apply that to limit the impact of that on 2022 budget. Okay, we can move on to the next slide. Some of the other strategies that are being considered. So for 2022, we would like to, just 1 second here. So we're working to transition all principal and interest funding to the operating budget. And some of the reason for that is to better align the expense and funding and illustrate the impact of borrowing decisions. So that transition can be slowed. So in the past, we've funded the principal and interest payments through the capital budget, but each year we hope to incorporate more of those into our operating budget. So that's one of the strategies that's being considered, however much we can work in this year. Departments are currently reviewing discretionary expenses. So those include consulting, contracted services, cost savings, and materials or anything potential reductions with increased remote work or virtual meetings, training, and online processes. And SLT and staff will be searching for potential service level options to provide for council consideration as we review the operating budget. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the capital budget. The 2022 draft capital budget includes 7.1 million in carry forward projects and 6.6 million in new projects. So that's 13.7 million in total. 5.4 million is funded from grants and 7.9 million funded from reserve and reserve funds. Almost half of the infrastructure funding from the capital levy goes towards future replacement in the draft for 2022. And in 2021, the capital budget, we were being cautious in trying to complete carry forward items with the onset of the pandemic. In 2022, some of the projects proposed within the draft capital budget are trying to keep infrastructure replacement on track so that the town doesn't fall behind with the replacement of that infrastructure. So that's some of the consideration within the draft budget that will be proposed to council as well. We can move on to the next slide there. Okay, the upcoming meetings. The first public meeting will be held on February 8th, where the draft capital budget will be discussed. So hopefully that capital budget will be available to council by the end of the week for sure, to prepare for that meeting. And then we have a draft operating budget special meeting set for February 22nd, 2022. There is a March 8th meeting set up for additional budget deliberations if those are needed. And we hope to have a budget bylaw for approval to council by March 15th, 2022. So there's still much work to be completed with staff and recommending the operating budget, but we're underway in reviewing that, and those deliberations are underway to bring council forward some options on how we can propose an operating budget that's within the guidelines provided here in this report. Are there any additional questions from council with what's been provided here or what's come?
I can't see everybody, so I'll have to bring that down so I can.
Okay, I'll see if, there we go.
All right, Councillor Horn.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips, for the presentation and the work that you and your staff, SLT, have done. Just a couple of comments. We are now in a 30-year high of inflation that we haven't seen in terms of food costs. Pricing has gone up 10%. We hear from our residents of the town of Parry Sound that our taxes are already high. Given the increased costs of inflation, food costs, and gas costs, I think that it does its due diligence to try to do our best to keep the tax increase at the lowest point we can for the upcoming year. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Borneman.
Well, in addition, thank you, Councillor Horn, for leading with that, because I was thinking along the very same line, but you're more eloquent than I. Ms. Phillips, for those of us who like to add and scribble on paper, will there be a budget binder available sometime between now and the 8th of February to look through the proposed capital budget?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we can make that available. We'll also provide an electronic copy for council as well, so if that's your preference. And then the budget meeting that's scheduled for February 22nd, we hope to be able to make that meeting for the operating budget, but there is an optional special meeting there. And if it takes a little bit more time to get through all these options, I'll have to keep council in the loop with that, and because we want to do the best we can with the operating budget proposed. So if there's any changes required there, I will definitely communicate those.
Thank you.
Councillor Keith.
Yes, Of course, I will be wanting a paper copy because yes, I do like to scribble. But number two is that will the public, seeing as there'll be an electronic copy and that'll be out before February the 8th, how will they have the ability to comment or give any questions? And they may not get an answer, but any questions that they would want to propose that may have been of help. Well, is there any way that's going to be able to be possible?
We will definitely post the draft budget on the website, similar to how we post our agendas right now. So if council would like to provide comment, they could always write in, similar to our typical agenda process. Those will be made available prior to the meeting.
And thank you. And my last question, excuse me, my last question in reference to this same matter is the plan that you'll be presenting forth in the budget, will you be able to give us some scenarios? Because I know at the end we're always presented with a scenario of whatever 1% what it is, 2%, etc. But is it possible there's any other scenarios that we could be given so that we can have a clearer idea? For example, in the operating budget, some possibilities, because I think it makes it a little easier if you can see some concrete samples there. Thank you.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So that's exactly what we're considering doing for council, is providing some different options where council can choose, since we may have to look at some service level items and make decisions on what we decide to remove because of the cost pressures in this budget. There may be some more difficult decisions to make in that area. So we'll try to make that as simple as possible. And in addition, on the February 22nd budget review meeting, there will also be the items for council consideration that will come forward at that meeting as well. So those will be itemized for council to understand the impact of those decisions, as well as we've done in the past.
Okay. Councilor McCann.
Yes, thanks. No more questions except, to get this out and done by the middle of March is good timing. Ms. Phillips, have you given yourself enough time and staff to do this work? I mean, February 8th is just a week from today, and the weeks to follow. Do you anticipate being able to keep on track, or do you think you need more time than the next month and a half?
I anticipate that we'll be on track for you, Mr. Mayor. We've already prepared for the February 8th meeting in that we have a draft and we're reviewing that and sort of finalizing our capital budget draft before we make that available to council. So I think we're in good position to be prepared for that meeting that's coming up.
Great, very good. I'm sorry, did I cut you off? I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything further? No? Okay. Ms. Phillips, thank you. We look forward to the budget binder and the electronic version as well. So, because Councilor Borneman is right, we do like to scribble.
Through Mr. Mayor, I'll make those budget binders available on Friday. So if council wants to stop by, they can grab them on that date. Okay.
That sounds really good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Phillips. So next item is 921 Kinsman Park Skate Trail. Councilor Borneman, you.
I really had nothing to add, Mr. Mayor, other than that 2 weeks ago, we'd asked that this be returned for some kind of decision. In the interim, the BOCC has reopened as, on schedule yesterday. In the last couple of weeks, I did send an email asking that, we have some information about whether or not we have staff and equipment to do an outdoor rink, an outdoor oval, and the BOCC, and how that would work. So I'm not sure if there's anything from Mr. Cairns or Ms. McNamara that tells us yes or no or whatever. But if we're going to do this year, we got to get on with it. Time's a wasted.
The ticking. Yep. Ms. McNamara?
Through your worship, thank you, Councillor Borneman. I indicated in the report that went to council at the last meeting that if the Bobby Orr Community Centre were to reopen, the Parks and Recreation Division of the department does not have the ability to maintain the Bobby Orr Community Centre, an outdoor rink, as well as a brand new skate path. We do not have the human capacity to deliver a quality product at those 3 locations. It does have to be kept in mind that the Kinsman Park is currently open and operational. On a typical year when the Bobby Orr Community Centre is open, you alluded to this before, and I did include this in my report. The Kinsman Park is maintained and operated on staff overtime. If council were to direct staff, look at creating, maintaining an outdoor oval at the Kinsman Park at this point in time, based on my conversation with our closest neighbor, Seguin, that did this, their director indicated that at minimum it was 2 full-time staff members, 40 hours a week for 2 staff members. For a 3-week period, that's how long it took them to create the trail that they have in place out in Seguin. Again, if this is something council wishes to see, it may be best that this type of endeavor be planned properly over the course of the summer, with a good location, and that the manpower to create and maintain this moving forward, all of those little innuendos are addressed before we jump in feet first into this big pool.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bachman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Ms. McNamara, for the update. Just in regard to comments and questions that were made during discussions at the last council meeting, there was some conversation in regards to opportunities for volunteers. I don't know what the policy is with the town of Parry Sound, but is that something potentially we could explore? I know this is done in other municipalities with their ice rinks, but I'm not sure if being part of a union has any, affects it. So if you could maybe elaborate on that.
Through you, Your Worship, and Mayor McGarvey, Councillor Borneman, and a few others in attendance may remember a time where the town of Parry Sound did hold agreements with whether it be the school board to have volunteer maintained outdoor rinks in various locations in the community. Councillor Bachman, yes, there is opportunity for volunteer maintained created outdoor rinks to happen in the community. It takes a very, very involved, very dedicated group of volunteers to take this on. If there were such a group of dedicated, interested individuals, staff would be more than happy to take a report recommendation to council to see this type of endeavor happen in the future. If I can elaborate on that one, on this one piece one more a little bit further, pre-COVID, there was discussion between myself as well as a few members of the Downtown Business Association, and one business owner in particular who was quite interested and keen on establishing an outdoor rink at the town dock area. Since COVID hit, all those plans have been put on hold as they did not have the capacity to dive in at this time. They have been pulled in many other directions. This is something that staff would be interested in revisiting with this group this summer when we do have appropriate time to plan this type of huge recreational amenity out and get proper documentation in terms of maintenance, creating, whether it be volunteer or staff, just get a good proper plan laid out. Thank you.
Yep. Follow up, Councillor Bachman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, yes, I was familiar with the efforts by to form the other um, ice skating down in the Bay Street area. And I think, that was really great that we were able to support that at that time. I guess one of the things that I would like to see, if we are putting a plan to maybe, look at partnerships, whether it's through Rotary, whether it's through the DVA. And we talk a lot about skating, but there's also a interesting croquis curl that I have been seeing, and I know I've had discussions with other counselors about this neat game that is evolving in different areas and communities. So I think if we get through our master recreation plan this year, we might be able to get a lot of feedback that would then allow us to properly plan and see really where the needs are. I mean, skating is one, of course, but not everybody puts on skates. And if this allows for an opportunity, especially in Market Square or something that brings people down to our downtown, I think that would be very valuable. So I'm really hoping to see us look beyond that if we are going to put a proper plan in place for next year.
Yes, Ms. McNamara.
Yes, through you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Bachman. Again, it needs to be remembered that it does take an interested group of driven volunteers to make things like this happen in the community. The current staffing complement in the Parks and Recreation Division and our current collective agreement state our core duties in the winter are the lobby or community center. In the summer, we move outdoor to Parks and Recreation. So again, if council is aware of groups and community members who are very interested in seeing things like this and amenities like this established in the community, please direct them our way. Again, staff is happy to work on agreements, park usage agreements to bring to council for consideration to make things like this happen in the community. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Borneman.
So these are good conversations to have. I just want to be assured that there will be some monies assigned to, or some considerations of what money should be assigned to these things going forward. So we're not sitting here again a year from now, or somebody isn't sitting here a year from now thinking, well, geez, we should have done this, but we didn't budget any money to do it. So I would like to see some accounting for these ideas included in this year's budget, so we can move forward.
Okay, Councillor Keith and then Councillor McCann.
Yes. Thank you. I had been just going along the same line as Councillor Borneman, because it seems to me from hearing Ms. McNamara tonight, where we are now, and realistically, when we're looking at figuring out our figures for the budget, we need to have clear information. And I do think that again, if we have scenario in that area of recreation, so we could have a better idea, that would be really helpful. I do think the idea of having volunteers participate, that's a great idea. But the bottom line is, I know I've seen from my experience that volunteers, unless you get a really group that are really gun-ho, what happens, it starts off with, we've got the energy, but it dwindles. And the dwindling and the cost to put that into place, it just is not realistic in the end. So I would like to see a couple of options in the budget so we could have an idea of cost, because there's no point from my viewpoint of us coming up with an idea that we may support next year than realistic. We're trying to keep a budget down so people are not paying high taxes. So I guess it goes back to when we're looking at the budget again, as the want and the need and the dream. So realistic, where are we for that budget? And so some figures there that can give me a better idea, because I also think that what had started out with a skating track, shall I say, at the Kinsman Park, and something that is, for example, on the water, that's a total different sort of a concept, because that's definitely, again, depends on, both depend on weather, but how much the ice freezes and not having slush, because I mean, there's slush out there right now. So all those things are variable. So I like to have some real clear-cut ideas. So I really think right now, although it was a grand idea, I think we're too late. Thank you.
Councilor McCann.
Thanks. This comment may actually go to, on a wider scale, to a recreation plan of some sort, but the location of the oval, where it is, I would imagine that residents in McDougall and Carling could easily avail themselves to this facility. Is there an opportunity to work with these other municipalities in forming some sort of a partnership and putting a plan together to make this oval thing something of a year-round infrastructure that would be utilized by more than just Parry Sounders? I don't know who would take on that question, but it is a comment more or less, and maybe for something to be considered next year.
I guess it'd have to be something that'd be looked at, Councilor McCann.
Yeah,
I know McDougall does they have their rink. They work hard at it. Carling apparently is just putting in a refrigeration unit into their rink. So that's going to be an expense. Apparently the tubing went in, I guess, this year, and I think next year the refrigeration unit's going in. So they're kind of staging it over. So it's an outdoor rink, but they do have it positioned and cordoned off so that the refrigeration will be quite effective, I would think. But anyway, that's where it is. So I think that's up for discussion later on.
Definitely. And it's the kind of thing that would need volunteers in some capacity too, to make it work. But I just run it up the flagpole there.
Yep. Councillor Backman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just in regards to Councillor Keith's comments, just to correct, the skating was going to be in the municipal parking lot, not on the bay. They would love, that group did want to have it on the bay, but as you noted, those conditions are, you just never know. And I just, again, go stress back to the master recreation plan that, I hope to see evolve over the next few months. And I think that through the engagement of the community and defining those wants and needs, as Councillor Keith noted on, is really important in determining those budgets set for next year, of course. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I think we've spun this one around a fair bit. Am I hearing from council basically that it's, I think, too late for this year, really? We need to allocate our staff appropriately where they are needed. And that is the BOCC and the Kinsman Park. So for this year, an outdoor rink's off the table, or an outdoor oval, correct? Okay, that's what I'm hearing. Okay, so Ms. Johnson, no further direction needed?
I've documented this in the minutes. I did hear a couple comments that I think the manager of Parks and Recreation might consider.
Yeah.
Being consider allocation in future budget and check other municipalities for their potential participation.
Right. Okay. We don't need to vote on that though, right?
No.
No. Okay. Good enough. All right. We're moving on to 931. And it's direction. Moved by Councillor McCann, second by Councillor Bachmann. Council directs staff to bring the parking bylaw back to council prior to the 2022 voting season with an amendment implementing paid overnight parking at Mill Lake Boat Launch. Discussion. I think everything was in the report. So Councillor Keith?
I was just going to say, though, anybody listening that hasn't read the report, maybe Ms. Kruger could do a nutshell version. Is that possible?
Sure.
Through your worship, the report provided an overview of the use of the boat launches over the past year in regards to our new commercial permits as well as our overnight parking permits. So patrols were conducted throughout last year's boating season after these changes were implemented, and an educational approach was taken as far as the commercial use permits, and businesses were advised of the new regulations. The end result was that we did have 3 commercial permits, seasonal permits that were in use for our boat launches. The other major change at the boat launches was the overnight parking permits, and these were in place for the Champagne Street boat launch. They were quite successful last year, and there was quite a few overnight permits issued, and those were managed through overnight patrols of the areas. Now, the rest of the boat launches did have prohibited overnight parking. Champagne Street was the only boat launch where we offered the permit, but we are considering that Mill Lake may be in a position to have overnight permits. So the report is asking for direction from council in regards to that, as there was interest expressed by the public to have some overnight parking available at that location. It does access obviously Mill Lake and is used by many residents and visitors as well for access to that.
Yeah, there are a number of cottages that are just boat access only, so they definitely need that space. Councillor Bachman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Ms. Kruger, for the report. Since implementing the overnight parking at the boat launches that we have, I did receive quite a few complaints from residents from the town of Parry Sound. The argument or the complaint was that as a taxpayer, they really felt that, this was a level of service that should be, provided through as part of recreation and lifestyle that we so much promote through our mission, vision, strategic plan. And I'm just wondering, how that, and of course, when we have neighboring municipalities that offer permits to the residents for the use of their boat launches, is if there's an opportunity that we would consider that for residents in the town of Parry Sound.
Through your worship, when implemented, it was determined at that time that the permits would be required for anyone to park at the Champagne Street boat launch. It is a widely used boat launch and there is limited parking there. So this was put in place to address some of those parking issues. Now, parking during the daytime does remain free for anybody between the hours of 5 a.m. and 11 p.m. So it really is just addressing the overnight piece. There is, of course, always opportunity to explore if the town were to want to perhaps offer a different approach for residents. I do know it was brought up last year when the boat launch regulations changed at that time and the parking regulations changed, that there was some correspondence from the public at that time in regards to this. So that is something that we could consider. Residents do have obviously other options, being that they're in town and they're local. If they required parking, potentially they do have options of not leaving either their vehicle and their trailer at the boat launch, that they could potentially return home. But if it was something we wanted to offer to residents as overnight, it's not meant to limit daytime parking to anybody. It's really just to offer the permits for that overnight piece.
Just as a follow-up, it's interesting that you note the time limits, and that's why I think that maybe there is a small percentage of people who might want to go camping for the weekend or might, come in a little later. I'm not a nighttime boater, but people I travel with, they have GPSs. And again, when we talk about the high taxes in town and being able to have that, I'm just wondering if maybe, there is an opportunity to create something that might be maybe not distributed with every tax invoice, but something that people could come to the town upon special request or on an as-need basis. But you are the bylaw expert and have done the research in this. So I will leave you with that for food for thought as you do bring back this bylaw, that maybe that's something for consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Comment? Discussion? No? Okay, anyone opposed to passing this direction? No one's opposed. That's carried. By Councillor Burden and second by Councillor Borneman, that council approved the 2021 fourth quarter progress report on the town's key performance objectives, otherwise known as KPOs, as set out in attachment number 1. Mr. Harris, is there anything you want to add?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I might just point out for the benefit of members of council and the public, some of the highlights from the last quarter. Just very quickly, it's been the town's objective to have the M&R property at 7 Bay Street declared surplus by the province so that it can be part of the redevelopment of the waterfront. So in the last quarter, the mayor and local MPP Norm Miller met with M&R staff as well as Infrastructure Ontario staff who are involved in decommissioning properties and looking for alternative sites. There was a meeting this fall and a tour of the facility to really understand what services are provided out of that facility and the ease at which those facilities services could be relocated elsewhere within the town. So that was, I think, a productive meeting. In addition, Infrastructure Ontario also was soliciting proposals and looking for alternative sites that they could propose to the MNRF if they were to relocate from 7 Bay Street. I think it was a positive meeting, and we're awaiting a final report on the results of their inquiries into other locations. It was reported at the last meeting, but Parry Sound Area Planning Board, effective January 1 this year, we're now council makes the final decisions on consents and applications. I think the public understands that they want those decisions that are in Parry Sound to be made by Parry Sound Council. So that was a good move. That took the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing approval to get that authority. And as I say, that was received last quarter. The West Parry Sound Recreation and Cultural Center, at the beginning of the quarter, the partnership agreement was entered into between the 6 municipal funding partners. The execution of that agreement funded the creation of a joint municipal services board. The board is represented by members of council from each of the 6 area municipalities and advisory board members from each of the 2 First Nations. That board has met a couple of times, and most recently they gave direction to issue an RFP for project management services. That RFP was issued January 17th and closes February 14th. That's the first major step in beginning the planning for the design, construction, and eventual operation of the facility. So that's pretty significant news. Also, council has been very desirous of improving pedestrian safety around the St. Charles Crossing, as well as the intersection of Wood and Isabella Streets. In the fourth quarter, council purchased the property on the inside corner of Wood and Isabella. That has a number of advantages for the town. With that piece of property, we're better able to improve the design options for it. avoids the need for a major retaining wall, so reduces construction costs. And the timing, we hope to complete the design in 2022 and then complete construction in 2023. And that the timing of the construction and improvement in safety in this area is coordinated and timed with the new mega school that's going up. So a lot of increased pedestrian traffic, and this can't do anything but improve the safety for everybody involved. One thing that wasn't on the list in your report, but was a significant issue that came up in 2021 that we had to deal with in the last quarter, was Seguin Township of Seguin's MZO request. On November 4th, the town received a notice that Seguin was going to rezone approximately 700 acres of land abutting the southern border of Parry Sound for residential development. And they asked for comments from neighboring municipalities, including the town, by December 3rd. So we refocused our efforts, assembled a team, and council had a special council meeting on November 30th. And at that meeting, staff reports were provided, as well as reports from experts. And the result of that was to make a submission to Seguin Council. A letter went to them on December 2nd. Since December 2nd, Seguin went forward with their request to the minister and submitted their MZO request at the beginning of January. And but that was a fairly well, it was unexpected, and a fair amount of staff resources were directed at putting an adequate response from the town together, because we think it has pretty significant issues and of strategic importance to the town, how this MZO goes forward, if it goes forward. Attached also to the update report are some statistics that we've been providing for members of council. They have quarterly comparators as well as the last year comparators. Two things to highlight. Last year, there were 16 residential permits issued. 2020, 16 residential permits issued. In 2021, there were 80. So a significant increase in the number of residential permits, which is clearly what we want to see happen. There's housing issues in the entire area. And the value of construction permits went up significantly. In 2020, $15 million in construction value for the permits issued. And in 2021, it was 21 million. So, you know, a significant and 30% increase in the value of construction, and a significant increase in the number of units being permitted. So that's all good news. Now, if there's any questions.
Good. Any questions? Councillor Bachman?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Harris. In regards to the master recreation plan, last time we had noted that we had a consultant assisting us with trying to potentially find a potential consultant or explore how we could get this completed. I'm just wondering if you or Mr. Cairns may have an update on that.
Certainly, I'll turn it over to Mr. Cairns. I don't recall engaging a consultant, but perhaps Mr. Cairns can provide some information.
Certainly, through your worship. I believe we had some conversations with Watson and Watson, perhaps during some of our other discussions regarding development charge studies and water and wastewater rate studies. And it was kind of a casual conversation, and they perhaps indicated they may have some insight into someone who could or who might potentially be available to bid on such an opportunity. I'm not sure that we got anything new from that conversation now.
Just as a follow-up, thank you, Mr. Cairns, for the update. As I'm eager to begin this project, and I sit at the computer for long periods of time, I just had Googled 2021, 2020 recreation plans, and probably found about 15 master recreation plans that were completed in the first couple pages of Google. There were comments previously that potentially our budget was low. That resulted in maybe nobody applying for the submitting an RFP, but there were the recreation plans were in the range of $50,000, 45 to 50, and I think ours is allocated at a $50,000 budget. And it was really interesting, and maybe this is because of the location, but there were one company that had worked on several of the municipality recreation plans. So I understand if we're not getting any feedback, I don't know what the next steps are, but it is slated for, I think, this first quarter of 2022. So just giving some insight as to how we could maybe proceed, and hopefully in the next report or in the next as we move forward in the budget, if we do need to increase that budget, if that is something staff feels is why we may not be getting an RFP submission, then we need to look at that. But I'm confident that the budget that we've set a few years ago is adequate. So I just wanted to provide that feedback tonight. Thank you.
Any further questions, comments? No? Okay. Anyone opposed to passing this resolution? No one's opposed. That's carried. Moved by Councillor Barnum, second by Councillor Burden. Whereas on Pink Shirt Day, residents are encouraged to wear pink and speak out against bullying in schools, workplaces, online, and at home. And whereas the first Pink Shirt Day was inspired by the act of kindness of a group of teenagers who purchased pink shirts and had fellow students wear them in honor of a high school student who was being bullied for wearing a pink shirt. And whereas everyone is encouraged to practice kindness towards others and to wear pink in an effort to speak out against bullying, now therefore Council of the Corporation of the Town of Parry Sound proclaims February 23rd, 2022 as Pink Shirt Day and Anti-Bullying Day in the Town of Parry Sound. Any questions, comments? Anyone opposed to passing the resolution? No one's opposed, that's carried. Okay. Sure, I'm not missing a direction here. Oh, item 952, relief of parking ticket fines. Councillor Bachmann.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, just a brief discussion. There was initiative going around that was implemented by Barry that I came across through social media, and it was a creative incentive that the city put forth to encourage residents to support local. This was just based on restaurants, but another community, Collingwood, did their campaign focused on shops. And what they would do is if you received a ticket in the downtown core, you had an opportunity to present your receipt of purchase to the town or the city and have your ticket dismissed. The different parts of this was to have an equivalent amount or more of the purchase. So if you, and again, it was just for the town to support and be creative through this and COVID times. And so I just wanted to, it was passed along to me from actually Councillor Borneman, and then coincidentally, I saw many people within the town sharing this news release throughout social media. And so that's what prompted me to look at this. I know many years ago when I was a downtown business association director, we had a policy that if you got a ticket in the downtown or shopping and could prove that, they would somehow dismiss the ticket. So I don't know if that's something that's in place, but I think if maybe Allison, Ms. Kruger is still on the meeting, if maybe she could speak to this, because I'm sure she's had an opportunity to review this, and I did discuss this with Mr. Thompson briefly.
Okay, so I don't see Ms.
Okay.
Kruger there, but
Through you,
Chief
Mr.
Thompson
Mayor.
is, yes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe I can help out. I know Ms.
Yep.
Kruger was planning on being online for this, but I think she got overly excited in how fast her item got through council. So, but she and I have talked extensively about this particular issue, and there are numerous examples of programs, as Councillor Bachmann has identified, that are available. A couple of differences to note would be that in Barrie, that's a paid parking system, and what we have is a free parking system. So people actually get to park for free for 2 hours or 4 hours right off the bat. So generally in the paid parking system, which is what we used to have, if everyone remembers, the meters, we did have a relief program at that time for people if they, you could pay for 15 minutes worth of parking time. And if you did exceed that and you were able to provide proof that you had actually been shopping in a local shop and you had just miscalculated how much time you were going to be sitting in that parking spot, there was a relief program. So when it comes to relief programs, they need to be taking a close look at what does the community want, what's going to match what we're after. Other examples are at Christmas time, which I know Alice and I have talked about, that might be a very suitable program for our community, would be for if people happen to get a parking ticket, they can make a like-sized donation to the community organizations, be that food banks or toy drives or things of that nature. So there are a variety of programs out there. Things that we do not provide relief for are safety issues, parking in front of hydrants, parking in handicap spots, or overnight parking during the winter time that inhibits that has the potential for inhibiting snow removal. So relief programs would be scoped significantly, and if council would like to pursue some of those, I think that Ms. Kruger in our conversations had suggested that she could come back with some examples for council's consideration, just recognizing that our parking program already provides free parking to residents, non-residents, anyone who comes into the community for 2 and 4 hours before any tickets would ever be issued.
Councillor McCann.
Thank you. Initially, I thought this was a great idea, and I looked at it a little bit more closely, and Chief Thompson has made some good points. Yes, we do have free parking, and for those who receive tickets for, I don't know, for lack of a better word, mischief, as you say, like places like where you're parking where you shouldn't be, whether it's snow removal or a fire hydrant, or you're parking in a handicap zone, which by the way happens quite a bit around town. And in private parking lots, you don't want to be rewarding people for that kind of action. The thing I wondered about was that would we, if for example, if we did have parking meters and somebody had a ticket, decided to go into a business, I don't think the town could dictate what business or what type of business that could be. It would have to be everybody or nobody, because I think we're sort of finding ourselves in a bit of a conflict of interest in some ways there, that it's very shaky ground as far as I'm concerned. you know, when you go some other towns and cities where there's validated parking, these are usually private parking lots, but we're talking about town-owned, taxpayer service, you know, provided services for, you know, for people. So I think that is something that we would need to consider. If we ever did move forward with something like this, we'd really have to have a good memorandum of understanding as to how this would be playing fair for for everyone. So that's my comment on it, my thought.
Thank you, Councillor McCann. Councillor Backman.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just as a follow-up to Councillor McCann's, this would be just based on the timeline of the parking. For instance, now that people can go back into restaurants, or maybe they're having a service done, or a bank meeting at the bank, and they're unable to get back to their car within that 2-hour time frame, etc. That's where this would be applicable. Obviously, the infringements fractions would not be. So again, this is just something I wanted to bring forth to see how council may feel about this. I understand the the paid parking perspective, but I just think that through these times, it is tough, and it would be, if there's ways that we can be creative to support our community at times like this, or at Christmas, I think it's worth investigating. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Keith.
Thank you. Well, I think that if one was going to investigate, I would like to hear from Ms. Kruger, how many people actually are being ticketed? Because it seems to me that when we came up with the time periods for people to park their vehicle and do business in town, it seemed there was a lot of work done there, and the efforts and times that came up with, I thought were quite flexible. And I also got the impression that the bylaw officer wasn't standing there right to the minute. So if it was 2 hours, that right at 2:02, the ticket was coming out. So it does concern me that this was an issue that a lot of time and energy was put into. I thought it was fairly well thought out. I guess if it's council's appetite to go back and look at this again, I just think that council has enough on their plate, and this has been working. If there was an idea, for example, at Christmas time, that suggestion at Christmas time, instead of paying a ticket, one contributes. But even that, I have the question I would say, and I would ask people to give back their memory. The town of Parry Sound and people who visit our town at the Christmas time, it seems to me the figures that were just presented, the Salvation Army, with the amount of money that's donated to the community each year, I think we have quite a generous community in contributing to others already. So I really think that is this really where council and staff need to be spending their energies, or could it be really spent in another area?
Councillor Borneman, then Councillor Horn.
Well, I see both sides of this, and I think back to when we were debating metered parking and non-metered parking. The DBA was a big driver in the decision that we arrived at, because they felt that parking was an impediment to doing business downtown. I'm not on the DBA this time around, but I've not heard much, if anything, about parking, as Councillor Keith indicates, since we moved away from meters. So I'm wondering if Councillor Burden could raise the issue at the next DBA meeting and see if there are serious concerns among the membership. Let's hear what they are. And if what's working is working for them, then we should know that as well.
Yep, sounds good. You're good with that, Councillor Burden?
I certainly am. I will make note of that, and next Wednesday will be our meeting. I'll mention to them.
Okay, sounds good. Councillor Horn.
I think when council debated this in the past, we realized the importance of free parking in the downtown and surrounding areas. The town gave up a lot of income to go to non-metered parking for individuals within 2 hours. Move your car, you have another 2 hours, that's 4 hours. So I really think that in terms of having this issue brought back to staff to look at is a moot point. I think we've done enough in terms of free parking for the town of Parry Sound, and that's just my feelings.
Okay. Anything else? Councillor Bachman.
Thank you, Worship. Just again, a final comment. This wasn't to reevaluate the entire parking component. This simply was to look at different initiatives to support local business, and that's why I brought it forward. Many of the local businesses have been closed and suffered, so if there was an opportunity that we can get people to again shop in those stores to offset that, that is where this was going. So again, thanks for everybody's feedback. I appreciate your time.
Okay. Councillor McCann.
Yes, Councillor Backman's heart is certainly in the right place, and anything we can do that helps and is mutually beneficial is great. I just kind of had a thought, you know, especially with COVID, so many people who are working at home, or they moved their businesses to their home. I don't know, I can't speak to the numbers, but if you look at the business roster for the Chamber of Commerce, and if you go online, there's so many people working out of their homes now. When we say that we're supporting local business, I think we want to remember that we want to remember all those in business, not just downtown. I mean, there are people who are working from their homes, who live on Bowes, Queen, and Edward Streets, Wabick Streets. So, you know, there's a lot out there. We may be unintentionally forgetting that that's a big part as we move forward into the next couple of years with self-employment out of their own homes.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so we're moving on. Take it. Yeah. Okay. Moved by Councillor Horn, second by Councillor Keith. That bylaw number 2022-7215 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a letter of agreement with the Ontario Minister of Transportation regarding funding under the dedicated tax funds for public transportation program. And that's to be considered as read a first time. All in favor? Carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Keith and second by Councillor Horn that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Any discussion? Councillor McCann.
So a question maybe for Mr. Thompson or Mr. Harris. We don't have public transportation, so how does this play in with our eligibility for this funding?
Ms. Phillips?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I overlooked you, Ms. Phillips. I'm sorry.
No
Yeah.
problem. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So each year we've been receiving funding towards this program, and that funding has been going to reserve to plan for the future replacement of Big Blue, which is an accessible van operated by Belvedere Community Support Services.
Right.
Yeah. So does that answer your question at all? We do track ridership and things like that are data points collected through CSS and remitted to MTO
Sure. Yeah.
for the program. Yeah.
Yeah. I was aware of that, and that helps such a great deal. I just wanted the public to understand that just because we don't have public buses on the road, that this is a program that the province has running that we do still benefit from, and the monies need to be spent in some area that provides transportation for the public, even through this this venue. So good old Mr. Blue, it costs money to keep him on the road.
Well, at
Thank you.
least we're doing something with the money, which is
Well,
important.
absolutely.
Yep.
You know, I think it was, and I'll give him credit for this, Councillor Borneman, who came up with the idea originally when we had scrapped public transportation. What do we do? And I think we had some $72,000 or $6,000 in the kitty at that time, and this was been a fantastic investment for the community.
Yeah, I think one of the drivers too in this, no pun intended, Wayne Parton. Wayne Parton volunteered for years up there at Belvedere, and Wayne also was an advocate for something like this. So I see a thumbs up from Councillor Borneman. So I think he remembers Wayne's advocacy probably on something like that as well. So yeah.
And just to let you know, we have 4 vehicles on the road. So, you know, that's pretty good. And then volunteer drivers also use their own vehicles if a wheelchair van is not needed. So we really are providing something for the community, and it's a great service. And it's just a matter of time before we need another van or another Mr. Blue. So
Yep,
Big Blue.
exactly. Yep. Anything further on this one? No. Anyone opposed to passing the bylaw? Nope, it's carried. Moved by Councillor McCann, second by Councillor Bachmann, that bylaw number 2022-7216 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council be considered as read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. All members in favor of having the second and third readings? Carried. Moved by Councillor McCann, second by Councillor Bachmann, that the bylaw above mentioned be considered as read a second and third time, passed, signed, and sealed. Anyone opposed to passing this bylaw? No, that's carried. Okay. Prior to adjourning, I'd like to offer the following information to the public regarding the next council meeting. The next regular meeting of council for the town of Parry Sound is scheduled for Tuesday, February the 15th, 2022 at 7 p.m. The meeting will be held via Zoom video conferencing and will be live streamed and recorded. All regular council meetings are held at 7 p.m. on the first and third Tuesday of each month, except January and August, where only one regular meeting is scheduled. The council meetings schedule, notices of special council meetings, complete agendas and minutes, and instructions on accessing live streamed and recorded council meetings are all posted on the town's website. Go to www.parrysound.ca under news and public notices. Your TV airs council meetings on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. following a regular council meeting. And for Cogeco listings, contact www.yourtv.tv. And Ms. Johnson, we will have a budget meeting next week, correct? And that will be televised as well?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so the 8th of February and 7 p.m.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, perfect.
Unless
Okay.
otherwise identified, but I understand 7 p.m.
Okay, that sounds good to me. Okay, thanks. Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Have a good night, everyone. Take care.